Today we're going to talk about preparing for your job interview. So let's first talk about the different types of interviews you might encounter. So first off, probably the most common one is a one-on-one interview where you're just interviewing with one person who's representing the company or organization. But there's also another kind, sometimes with big companies like BC Hydro or different companies that they're really busy, they get lots of applications. Sometimes they'll have what's called a serial or a screening interview, and you might just have an interview with somebody in HR. And then if you get through that initial interview, then they might call the manager in and have a second interview, so you're going on to the next step if you've met the criteria. The third type of interview is a panel one, and this is also quite common in a lot of professions. So that could be where you have two or more people interviewing you, and that can be a little bit intimidating, and sometimes it's hard to make eye contact. So when you're responding to questions, you want to acknowledge all of the panelists with occasional glances, but you're going to maintain primary eye contact with the person who asked the question, and normally they'll take turns asking questions and going around. And then another type of interview is the group interview. And that's where you're actually not by yourself. You and other people are also being interviewed at the same time in a group. I've had a few of those, and they can be a little bit funny sometimes. I had one where we had to put Lego together, and they were looking at how we worked as a group and how we could communicate with each other and interacted and so on, and leadership skills. So those aren't necessarily as common, but you might certainly come across those as well. A lot of these interviews are, of course, face-to-face, but more and more there's also video conferencing or phone interviews as well, especially if you're at a distance or perhaps with COVID-19 and the pandemic, where people can't meet face-to-face. So there's a lot more of this video conferencing. So it's important to be able to apply a lot of things we're talking about to both face-to-face and also virtual interviews. It's important to make a really good first impression. So when you come in, you need to shake hands if you're face-to-face, or even virtually. You're going to have eye contact, you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to smile. You always want to show you're prepared as well by having an extra copy of your resume and cover letter. And make sure you've done some research in advance about the job before the interview to show you're really interested in it, and also about the company. Also have a pen and paper or something to write with, so that again, you're looking like you're prepared and that you're not just kind of winging it. Now, during the interview, you want to really make sure that you send positive nonverbal messages and you act professionally. So you want to arrive on time, be courteous, dress professionally, and greet the person confidently. And throughout the interview, you want to definitely make sure you're aware of your body movements, your nonverbal cues. So keep your hands and arms and elbows to yourself. Don't lean on the desk. Keep your feet on the floor. Don't cross your arms in front of you. Keep your hands out of your pockets and so on. You also want to have really good posture. So you'll want to sit up straight, maybe lean forward a little bit slightly, but without slouching. But you don't want to look too stiff and uncomfortable. You also, again, want to practice having good eye contact. So a direct gaze, at least in North America, suggests that you're interested and that you're trustworthy. So if you're being, again, interviewed by a panel, you remember to maintain eye contact with all of the interviewers. You also want to use your gestures of your hands effectively, or your head, nod to show agreement and interest. You don't want to overdo it, but you can use some of your body language. Also, you want to smile enough to convey a positive attitude. You also want to practice good listening skills. So show the interviewer you're interested and attentive by listening carefully to the question being asked. That'll also, of course, help you answer your questions appropriately. Now, this is important. Make sure you've turned off all of your devices. Don't have your phone on, even with the ringer on. You don't want to be embarrassed by having it go off or even buzzing during an interview. This should go without saying, don't chew gum, and sound enthusiastic and interested. The tone of your voice really has a big effect on the words you say. So try not to sound bored or frustrated or sarcastic during an interview, because employers, of course, want employees who are enthusiastic and interested. So there's some pretty standard questions that most employers ask. They may adjust the wording slightly, but sort of the intention behind them is the same. So you should be able to prepare in advance and be ready to answer these types of questions. So the first one is, tell me about yourself. And that's the one where you're going to answer with your USP, your unique selling proposition. It's where you're going to give a little bit about your background, your skills, and your experience. And that's usually sort of the first question that employers like to ask. And it's, again, a chance for you to sort of get settled and show your confidence and show that you're prepared. But another question is, or two questions, why should we hire you, or why do you want to work here? They're kind of related. And so, this is, again, something that you can prepare in advance. And, it's hard when you're in an interview because you have to show that you're confident. Now, reading through the job description and understanding your audience, the employer, will really help you a lot with this one. Because when a hiring manager asks you, why should we hire you? She's really asking, what makes you the best fit for this position? And so your answer to this question should be a concise sales pitch that explains what you have to offer the employer. And so when you're getting ready for the interview, take a moment to review the job description. Make a list of the requirements for the position, including personality traits, skills, and qualifications. Then make a list of the qualities you have that fit these requirements. For each quality, think of a specific time that you used that trait to achieve something at work. For example, if you list that you're a team player, think of a time in which your ability to work well on a team resulted in a successfully completed project. Don't forget to think beyond the job description and consider which of your skills and accomplishments make you a better candidate than the competition. For example, maybe you have an additional certification that makes you more knowledgeable about the company's product than the typical salesperson. The most important thing, though, you can do in this is to talk to them about what they're looking for. So you might say, you're looking for somebody who's hardworking, knowledgeable, and trustworthy. Well, I'm a very trustworthy person, for example, and then you give an example. Now that not only shows that you have the skills, but you've also looked through the job and So again, if you're asked, why should we hire you for this position? What you want to do is make sure that in your response, you demonstrate that you've done a lot of research about the organization and the job posting. So you might refer to their mission statement, or you noticed some of the things that they've accomplished recently, or you talk about what you saw in the job posting. And then you match your personal skills and abilities and backgrounds to what they're looking for, to their needs, right? So that shows preparation and forethought, and it volunteers enough information without being prompted. So you don't want them to have to say, okay, well, tell us a little bit more. You want to be able to be prepared and be able to speak directly to that. So a lot of times, employers will ask what we call behavioral-based questions. And instead of just asking, do you have good customer service, or kind of getting straight answers, they want to hear stories. We all love to hear stories, and that tells a lot about the person. So some common types of behavioral questions would start out by saying, tell me about a time when you, and then there might be different options after that. But your task beforehand is to prepare some really good stories that demonstrate some of your strengths. Maybe it could be from a job, from a volunteer position, from being a student or a group leader or something like that. So some of the questions that you might be asked are, tell me about a time when you demonstrated exceptional customer service, or when you resolved a conflict with a peer, or thought outside the box and implemented a creative solution, or went above and beyond to complete a task or project. Now, if you don't plan ahead, sometimes you might get asked that and you're kind of come up with a blank and you're not sure what to say. And so it's important to prepare these stories in advance so that you're ready to take them out of your back pocket and share them. So I'm going to show you a strategy on how you can do that. So the STAR technique is sort of a handy step-by-step way to answer these types of behavioral questions. It's a formula. And so there's 4 steps to answering using this technique. First of all, you're going to describe the situation. Describe the situation in which the event took place in the story you're telling. Then you want to say the task. Describe what task you were asked to complete. If there was a certain problem or issue you were trying to solve, describe that at this point. Then you want to say what action you took to complete the task or solve the problem. Now, lots of people just end here, but the most important step is to show the results. So you did all of this, so what happened? So, explain the result of your actions. For example, if your actions resulted in completed a task, resolving a conflict, improving your company's sales record, and so on. Explain this. Don't forget that last step. So try to focus on how your actions resulted in a success. So let's look at an example of how we can use STAR for this behavioral question. So the question, tell me about a time you had to complete a task under a tight deadline. Describe the situation and explain how you handled it. So we're going to use STAR, and here's an example of how you could do that. You could answer it like this. While I typically like to plan my workout in stages and complete it piece by piece, I can also achieve strong work under a tight deadline. Once, at a former company, an employee left days before a big project of his was due. I was asked to take it over with only a few days to learn about and complete the project. I created a task force, delegated work, and we all completed the assignment with a day to spare. I think I tend to thrive under tight deadlines. Okay, so that's an example of a STAR answer. Did you catch all of the steps? So the situation was that I was at a former company, the employee left before a big project was due, and then the task, I was asked to take over the project with only a few days to learn about and complete it. So what was my action? Well, I created a task force, I delegated the work, and then the result, we all completed the assignment with a day to spare. All right? So that's a good example. Let's look at another one. Okay, so what do you do when a team member refuses to complete his or her portion of the work? Okay, note that this might be worded somewhat differently than what you prepared. Maybe you prepared for how do you deal with conflict in the workplace. But isn't it similar enough that you could probably use the same story? So how about this STAR response? When there are team conflicts or issues, I always try my best to step up as a team leader if needed. I think my communication skills make me an effective leader and moderator. For example, once I was working on a team project and 2 of the team members got into an argument, both refusing to complete their assignments. They were both dissatisfied with their workloads, so I arranged a team meeting where we rearranged the assignments for the team. This made everyone happier and more productive, and our project was a success. Okay, if you've ever been in a team before, you've probably recognized that can happen, right? Did you catch the 4 steps, the STAR? So the situation, working on a team project, 2 of the team members got into an argument, they were refusing to complete their assignments. Okay? So the task and the action, they were dissatisfied with their workloads, so I arranged a team meeting where we arranged the assignments for the team, and then the result, this made everyone happier and more productive, and our project was a success. All right? So could you do something like that? All right, so your task is going to be coming up with some STAR statements for each of these 4 questions and being prepared to share them in a live job interview. So you're going to have to put on your thinking caps and think, it could be in a team, it could be in a group setting in a class, it could be, in any kind of a professional situation you might have found yourself in. Come up with some stories and put them into the STAR statements. and guaranteed this will help you with your behavioral questions.